The morning sun filtered through the sheer white curtains, casting a soft glow over the tidy suburban home. Emily Harper, a 34-year-old freelance graphic designer, sat at her breakfast table, savoring a steaming cup of coffee. Life had always seemed predictable in its comfort. Married for 7 years to Daniel, a successful corporate lawyer, their life was an idyllic picture of modern domestic bliss. Or so Emily thought. Emily had met Daniel at a mutual friend's party. He was charming, attentive, and made her feel like the only woman in the room. Their whirlwind romance culminated in a romantic proposal at sunset on the beach, a memory Emily held close to her heart. For years, she believed she had found her soulmate, a partner who cherished her as much as she cherished him. But recently, Emily couldn't shake a lingering unease. Daniel had been working late more often. His phone, once casually left around the house, was now glued to him, its screen perpetually face down. Emily attributed it to work stress, though a nagging doubt whispered in the back of her mind. Any rainy evening, as Emily cleared the dinner table, Daniel's phone buzzed on the counter. He was in the shower, and a glance at the screen revealed a text from an unfamiliar number. "Miss you. When will I see you again?" Emily's heart dropped. Her hands trembled as she replaced the phone, careful not to leave evidence of her curiosity. She rationalized it must be a misunderstanding, maybe a wrong number. But the seed of suspicion was planted, its roots spreading rapidly. Over the following weeks, Emily's unease grew. Daniel's behavior became increasingly erratic. He started canceling plans, offering vague excuses about emergency meetings. Their once effortless conversations now felt strained. Emily confided in her best friend, Laura, who urged her to trust her instincts. "Emily," Laura said one afternoon over coffee, "if something feels off, it probably is. You're not crazy for noticing changes." The turning point came when Emily was organizing tax documents in the home office. She stumbled upon a receipt from a jewelry store, dated 2 months ago, for a necklace she had never received. The receipt bore no inscription to identify the recipient, but it wasn't hard for her to connect the dots. Her mind raced as she pieced together fragments of odd behavior. The cryptic texts, the late nights, the unexplained purchase. The man she trusted with her life was hiding something, and Emily resolved to uncover the truth. Determined but unsure where to begin, Emily started observing Daniel more closely. She noted the numbers he frequently called, the times he seemed distracted, and the occasions when he avoided eye contact. One evening, while Daniel slept, Emily carefully accessed his laptop, which he usually kept password protected. To her astonishment, she found a hidden folder marked personal. Inside were scanned legal documents, including a marriage certificate. Emily's breath caught in her throat as she read the names: Daniel Harper and Jessica Fields. Her vision blurred with tears as she realized the date. It was from 2 years before she and Daniel had married. Her world crumbled. Questions swirled in her mind. Who was Jessica? Did she know about Emily? Was this some kind of mistake? Emily sat alone in the darkness, the sound of her heartbeat echoing in her ears. The man she thought she knew had a past, or perhaps even a present, she had never been a part of. But Emily wasn't the type to crumble without answers. The betrayal burned in her chest, igniting a determination to uncover the full truth, no matter the cost. Emily couldn't sleep after discovering the marriage certificate. The man lying beside her, someone she thought she knew intimately, was now a stranger. Each time she looked at him, a new wave of anger and betrayal crashed over her. She needed answers, but where would she begin? The first step was to confirm her suspicions. Emily decided to dig deeper into Jessica Fields. Late at night, she searched social media platforms, her fingers trembling as she typed the name into search bars. It didn't take long to find a profile, a smiling woman with auburn hair, radiant in every picture. Her bio read, wife, teacher, dog mom. Emily's stomach churned. The word wife taunted her. Scrolling through Jessica's photos, Emily noticed a familiar figure in the background of a group shot at a holiday party. Daniel stood there, his arm draped casually around Jessica's shoulders. The timestamp on the photo? 3 months ago, right before his supposed work retreat. The betrayal deepened, but Emily wasn't ready to confront him without more evidence. She called Laura and recounted everything. "This is insane," Laura said, her voice equal parts furious and concerned. "You can't let this go, Emily. You need proof. Something concrete to confront him with." Emily nodded, her resolve hardening. "I need to know everything." Emily began tracking Daniel's movements. She noted the evenings he left the house under the guise of work and followed him discreetly in her car. On one such evening, he drove to a small suburban house, Jessica's address, as Emily had confirmed earlier through an online search. Parking a block away, Emily watched from her car as Daniel approached the house with ease, unlocking the door with his own key. Her heart shattered as the reality of his double life solidified before her eyes. The following day, Emily hired a private investigator. She provided him with all the information she had: Jessica's name, address, and the marriage certificate. Weeks passed, each day an excruciating test of patience. Daniel's behavior remained suspicious, but he seemed oblivious to Emily's growing awareness. The investigator's report arrived one rainy afternoon. Flipping through the document, Emily discovered the extent of the betrayal. Daniel had been married to Jessica for over 8 years. They had a life together, a mortgage, shared bank accounts, even a dog named Max. But what hit Emily hardest was the revelation that Daniel's marriage to her was illegal. He had never divorced Jessica. Her own marriage, the life she had built with him, was a lie. Fueled by rage and heartbreak, Emily decided to confront Daniel. That evening, she prepared a calm facade, though her insides churned with fury. "Daniel," she began after dinner, her voice steady. "Who is Jessica Fields?" Daniel froze, the color draining from his face. His reaction confirmed everything. "Emily, I can explain." "Explain what?" she interrupted, slamming the investigator's report onto the table. "That you've been married to someone else this entire time? That our marriage isn't even real." Daniel stammered, his excuses weak and hollow. He spoke of mistakes, of not knowing how to untangle his past, of loving Emily, but feeling trapped in a web of his own making. His words only deepened her pain. "You had years to tell me the truth, Daniel. You chose to lie instead." The confrontation ended with Daniel leaving the house, but Emily wasn't done. She needed to hear Jessica's side of the story. Mustering her courage, she reached out to Jessica, sending her a carefully worded message. "Hi, Jessica. My name is Emily. I believe we need to talk about Daniel Harper." Jessica responded within hours, agreeing to meet. The encounter took place at a quiet cafe, the air thick with tension. Jessica arrived, her expression guarded but curious. "I don't understand," she said, sitting down. "What's this about?" Emily took a deep breath, sliding the marriage certificate across the table. "I think we're both married to the same man." Jessica's face turned pale as she read the document. Her hands trembled, and tears welled in her eyes. This can't be real." As they talked, it became clear that Jessica had no idea about Daniel's second life. She shared stories of their marriage, her love for him, and the recent distance she noticed but hadn't questioned. The pain in her voice mirrored Emily's own. The two women formed an unlikely bond, united by betrayal. Together, they decided to hold Daniel accountable. Emily reached out to an attorney, and Jessica began reevaluating her own relationship with Daniel. As the days passed, Emily grappled with a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sadness, and a faint glimmer of relief. She wasn't alone in this fight. With Jessica by her side, she found the strength to confront the man who had shattered their lives. The cafe was nearly empty, its usual hum subdued as the evening drew on. Emily and Jessica sat at a small corner table, their earlier meeting now extending into a tense alliance. Both women had agreed. This couldn't end quietly. Daniel needed to face the consequences of his double life. Together, they planned a confrontation. Jessica, still reeling from the revelations, agreed to invite Daniel to her house under the pretense of needing to talk. Emily would be there, ready to confront him. The night of the confrontation, Emily arrived early. Jessica's home was everything Emily expected, a warm, lived-in space with pictures of Daniel and Jessica on every surface. Seeing his smiling face in those photos filled Emily with both rage and sorrow. Jessica paced the living room nervously. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her voice trembling. Emily nodded firmly. "We deserve answers. And he deserves to face us." The sound of a car pulling into the driveway silenced them. Emily's heart pounded as she heard the front door open. "Jess!" Daniel called out as he stepped inside, his tone casual. He froze when he saw Emily standing in the middle of the room. "Daniel," Emily said coldly. "Surprise." His eyes darted between the two women, panic flashing across his face. "What's going on?" Jessica stepped forward, holding up the marriage certificate Emily had found. "We know Daniel. About everything." Daniel's face crumpled, and for a moment he seemed genuinely at a loss. "I can explain." "Don't," Emily interrupted, her voice sharp. "Don't you dare insult us with more lies." The room crackled with tension as Daniel stumbled through excuses. He claimed he hadn't intended to hurt either of them, that he'd gotten trapped in a situation he didn't know how to escape. "You didn't get trapped, Daniel," Jessica snapped, tears streaking her face. "You made choices. Choices that destroyed both of us. You married me while you were still married to her," Emily added, her voice shaking with fury. "Do you even understand what you've done?" Daniel's defenses crumbled. "I love you both," he said weakly, his words falling flat. The absurdity of his statement hit Emily like a slap. "Love? You call this love? Lying to us, deceiving us, taking years of our lives. You think that's love?" As the confrontation unfolded, Daniel's lies unraveled further. Emily learned that he'd maintained his double life by carefully balancing his time, concocting elaborate excuses for his absences. Jessica, meanwhile, had been kept in the dark, oblivious to his second marriage. "Did you ever think about what would happen if we found out?" Jessica asked, her voice breaking. "Did you think we wouldn't? Or did you just not care?" Daniel had no answer. His silence spoke volumes. Finally, Emily stood, her voice steady but laced with finality. "This is over, Daniel. Whatever you thought you were doing, it's done. You've lost us both." Jessica, though heartbroken, nodded in agreement. "You'll hear from my lawyer. Don't bother coming back." Daniel tried to protest, but neither woman wavered. The strength of their united front left him with no choice but to leave. His shoulders slumped in defeat. As the door closed behind him, the silence was deafening. Emily and Jessica sat together, their emotions raw but resolute. "I don't know what happens next," Jessica admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Neither do I," Emily replied. "But at least we know the truth now." For the first time, Emily felt a flicker of peace. The confrontation had been painful, but it was also liberating. The man who had betrayed them was no longer in control. The days following the confrontation passed in a haze for Emily. She had thrown herself into work, hoping the steady hum of routine would drown out the ache in her chest. But it was impossible to ignore the absence of Daniel, the man she had once trusted implicitly, now exposed as a stranger. Her home, once a sanctuary, felt hollow. The small details, the way his shoes still sat by the door, his favorite coffee mug on the counter, mocked her. On a quiet evening, she gathered his belongings into boxes, each item a reminder of their fractured life. Laura was a constant presence during this time, showing up unannounced with takeout and bottles of wine. "You did the right thing, you know," Laura said one evening, sitting cross-legged on Emily's couch, confronting him. "Standing up for yourself." Emily nodded, but stayed silent. The validation was comforting, yet it didn't erase the gnawing sense of betrayal. "How do I move forward, Laura? Everything I thought I knew about my life, it feels fake now." "You rebuild," Laura said simply, "piece by piece, and you don't have to do it alone." Meanwhile, Jessica reached out periodically, their unlikely bond evolving into a fragile friendship. The two women found solace in sharing their stories and unpacking the layers of deception. Jessica confided how she had filed for divorce, her heartbreak tempered by a newfound resolve to reclaim her independence. "I thought I'd never survive this," Jessica admitted during one of their phone calls. "But you were right, Emily. Knowing the truth, no matter how painful, is better than living a lie." Emily agreed, though the path ahead still felt uncertain. Daniel, on the other hand, had vanished from their lives, retreating into the shadows as the consequences of his actions unfolded. Emily heard through mutual acquaintances that he had moved into a rented apartment and was attempting to rebuild his own fractured life. Though she felt no sympathy for him, she couldn't deny the faint pang of sadness that lingered. She had loved him once, after all. Her attorney confirmed that her marriage to Daniel was legally void due to his prior union. While the revelation brought a sense of closure, it also left her grappling with the implications of what she had thought was her marriage. One afternoon, Emily visited her parents' home. Sitting at the kitchen table with her mother, she found herself reflecting on her journey. "You're stronger than you think, Emily," her mother said, reaching for her hand. "This doesn't define you. It's just a chapter, not the whole story." The words resonated deeply. For so long, Emily had felt trapped in the narrative of betrayal, but perhaps her mother was right. She could write a new story for herself. Emily began taking small steps toward healing. She joined a support group for women who had experienced infidelity, finding solidarity in shared experiences. She resumed hobbies she had abandoned during her marriage: painting, hiking, and spending weekends at the beach. The process was slow and often painful, but each step felt like reclaiming a part of herself. One evening, while sorting through old photographs, Emily came across an image of her and Daniel from their honeymoon. They were smiling, carefree, and in love, or so she had believed. She stared at the photo for a long moment before placing it in the box with his other belongings. This wasn't her reality anymore. Her future was hers to shape, free from the shadows of deceit. By the end of the month, Emily stood on her balcony, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The world felt quieter now, less chaotic. She had faced betrayal, heartbreak, and loss, but she had also discovered an inner strength she hadn't known existed. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to feel a glimmer of hope. A crisp autumn morning found Emily standing in the park where she and Daniel had exchanged vows 2 years earlier. The spot held bittersweet memories now, a blend of love, hope, and the pain of betrayal. She had come here with a purpose, not to relive the past, but to release it. She reached into her bag and pulled out a journal, its leather cover worn from weeks of use. Inside were pages filled with her thoughts, her anger, her grief, and most importantly, her hopes. Emily opened to the final entry and read aloud, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "I loved you, Daniel, truly, and I thought you loved me. But the truth has shown me that love, without honesty, is hollow. I won't let this define me. I won't let your choices steal any more of my joy. Today, I let go." She closed the journal, feeling a sense of closure she hadn't thought possible. In the weeks following the confrontation, Emily had begun to rebuild her life with purpose. Her home, once filled with remnants of a shared life, now reflected her own tastes and identity. She painted the walls, rearranged the furniture, and hung up new artwork she had created herself. Her paintings were a revelation, vibrant and raw, capturing the emotion she had suppressed for so long. At Laura's urging, she submitted a few pieces to a local gallery. To her surprise, they were accepted, and she was invited to showcase her work in an upcoming exhibition. "Your art is incredible, Emily," Laura said during a visit to the gallery. "It's like you're pouring your soul onto the canvas." Emily smiled, feeling a warmth she hadn't in months. "Maybe I am. And maybe it's time I start living for myself." Jessica and Emily remained in touch, their shared ordeal forming a bond neither had anticipated. On one occasion, they met for coffee, their conversation less about Daniel and more about their respective journeys. "I'm taking a solo trip to Europe," Jessica announced, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "I've always wanted to go, but Daniel, well, he wasn't the adventurous type." Emily laughed. "Good for you. You deserve it. Jessica reached across the table, squeezing Emily's hand. And so do you. Thank you for standing with me when I couldn't stand alone. The gratitude in her voice touched Emily deeply. Their unlikely friendship was a reminder of the resilience they both possessed. Emily never saw Daniel again, though he did attempt to contact her once. He left a voicemail, his voice heavy with regret and apologies, but Emily didn't return the call. She didn't need his words to move forward. Her closure came not from him, but from herself. The night of her gallery opening was a turning point. Dressed in a deep emerald dress that reflected her newfound confidence, Emily mingled with the crowd, listening to their reactions to her work. One piece, titled Rebirth, garnered particular attention. It's powerful, a woman commented, studying the painting. There's pain here, but also hope. It's like the storm has passed, and the light is breaking through. Emily smiled, her heart swelling with pride. That's exactly what it is. As the evening wound down, Emily stood before the piece, sipping a glass of wine. For the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to feel proud, not just of her art, but of herself. She had faced betrayal, heartbreak, and loss, but she had emerged stronger. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had been hers, and she had reclaimed it. Months later, Emily found herself at the beach, standing at the water's edge. The waves lapped at her feet, the salty breeze tingling her hair. She closed her eyes, breathing deeply, and felt a sense of peace wash over her. She was no longer the woman defined by betrayal. She was Emily, an artist, a survivor, a woman who had rediscovered her strength. As she turned to leave, she smiled to herself, the horizon stretching wide and endless before her. The future was hers to shape, and she was ready.